no doubt you've had encounters with fans that have come up to you. What's been the most bizarre fan encounter that you've ever had?
I was flying through somewhere and somebody looked at me and goes, "Hey, Mike Tirico." And I'm like, not even remotely. Not even close.
If they'd said John Slattery from Mad Men, that would have worked.
I get that one a lot. Roger Sterling. I do get that one a lot.
Thank you for joining the relaunch of my podcast, More with Marc Istook. I'm excited about my first guest. A little deja vu all over again, which I'll get into in a moment. He spent 23 years at ESPN, where he anchored SportsCenter, hosted NFL Live, easily one of the most recognizable faces and voices in sports television. Since he left the mothership in 2020, he's built a second act as an independent media entrepreneur. We're talking podcasts, golf coverage, football, a network of shows under his own name. Trey Wingo, thank you for joining me for the first episode of a rebranded More with Marc Istook.
Hey, I'm honored to be first out of the gate, brother. Always good to be with you.
I think we need to have some full disclosure here with the audience. We did this conversation yesterday. We did a full almost an hour, and we're nearing the end of that conversation. And I look at the little dialogue on the screen here that we use to record these podcasts, and I'm like, why is that? Where's my timer? Where's the record timer? I didn't press record.
Yeah, it happens. And I told you this story after you fully disclosed what happened there. When I was working in a local station in St. Louis, Dan Jansen, the Olympic speed skater, came to town, and his story was, if people don't remember, his sister passed away before his first Olympics in 1988, and he raced to honor her, and he fell and didn't finish, and he was the gold medal favorite. Same thing happened in 92, and then finally in 94 in Albertville, he didn't fall and he won a gold medal. He came to St. Louis, and I had a 45-minute interview with him, and just pouring out about the emotions of that and his sister passing away and all that kind of stuff. And we get back to the truck, and my cameraman looks at me and says, "You're going to kill me." I'm like, "What happened?" He goes, "I didn't. I double tapped the record button. I didn't get any of it." So I had to go back to Dan and say, "Hey, that was great. Can we talk about all of that again?" So I get it. It happens. It happens.
Well, somewhere I feel like a recording of our conversation exists. If Instagram's listening, the social media sites are listening, somewhere there's a lost episode floating off in the ether. But the cool thing is that it gives us a chance to expand upon some of the stuff that we talked about. I have been a big fan of yours for many years, obviously as a sports fan and an ESPN watcher. But yesterday was the first time that we'd had a chance to kind of interact in person, or at least virtually. But we've got a lot of, kind of friends or colleagues in common over the years. I had a conversation about Stuart Scott yesterday. I worked with Rich Eisen at NFL Network for a long time. I know you guys were colleagues at ESPN. And then Ed Werder, he and I did quite a few Cowboys segments for WFAA, sure. And you guys, of course, spent a lot of time on air together at ESPN as well. So it's a small world when you work in broadcasting.
It is, and it's very incestuous in many ways, right? You work with someone there, they know someone here, you work together, and then you find yourselves working at the same place or a different place with the same people over and over again. And those guys you mentioned, and obviously Ed and I go way, way back. I'm sure he might have told you about some of the hijinks I pulled on him at times. I would always see his phone on the desk. So as I was tossing to him across the studio, I would also call him so his phone would go off while he's trying to answer one of my questions. I'm an ass kind of that way. We had some good times together.
Well, you do the 37th hit on the Cowboys in a given day. You feel like you need to add a degree of difficulty to that conversation.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't want us to repeat word for word the conversation we had yesterday, because that'd be kind of boring. But one of the things I did enjoy about getting to hear more of your story, you're a guy who kind of grew up with a feet in two different worlds. Your kind of roots in the Northeast, in New York City and Connecticut, where you mentioned being now, and then also in Texas, where I am, and where you ended up going to college at my rival, the hated Baylor Bears. Back when the rivalry was not kind of what it is today.
No, it was not. I mean, the Gary and Art thing really got that rivalry going for sure. But yeah, I do sort of feel like I have two sort of homes, for lack of a better term. I was born in New York, grew up most of my life in Greenwich, Connecticut, right outside the city. But my mother, my father, my aunts, my uncles, all from Texas. My dad grew up in a tiny town called Gonzales, and then I went to high school in San Antonio. My mom is from Texarkana, and she makes sure she points out that she was on the Texas side of Texarkana High School, not the Arkansas, because it was Texas High School and Arkansas High School in Texarkana. She was on the Texas side. I had aunts and uncles that lived in Marshall, tons of aunts and cousins that lived all over Fort Worth and Dallas. Camp Bowie is ingrained in my heart forever. Those red brick streets, Kincaid's Burger,
oh man,
all that kind of stuff. Yeah, oh yeah, let's go.
You're throwing out the
Come
good
on.
ones. I mean, let's see.
I will get to the Hewlin Mall eventually. I mean, let's just be serious about it.
Or what's left of it.
I'll go so deep on this, it'll be mentioned in the Tanglewood Moms Facebook page. Okay, that's how far we're doing this.
That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Next thing I know, you're going to tell stories about Panther City, and but already the Tanglewood Moms Facebook page, they are abuzz with their mention.
They say if you can reach one person, you've done your job.
It matters to this one. It matters to this one. I want to play a sound for you here on the phone, and I want you to tell me the feeling that immediately comes to mind when you hear this sound. What do you think? What comes to mind? Yeah. How do you feel? Is it triggering when you hear that sound?
Well, as I told you yesterday, I want to be full disclosure. The first thing that I think of is the old ESPN mobile phone, because they asked me to be like the designated anchor monkey for that. You know, like, hey, will you be the face of this and talk about the ESPN phone, how great it is, all that kind of stuff. So whenever, Lee Steinberg, I ran into Lee Steinberg, the great agent, agent of the quarterbacks. He had them all, and then he sort of went through some times and then came back, and he's now Patrick Mahomes' agent, among others. He had an ESPN phone. And whenever you'd get a score alert or something, the phone would go dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. So weirdly, that's the one thing I think of more than anything else. But obviously, it's a chime to, I think, a lot of people's memories of what ESPN was and what ESPN might still be. But I mean, that's signature. In fact, I know the guy that wrote that song. There's a guy named John Colby, our kids grew up with his kids in a little town near to the studios. He wrote the da-na-na-na-na, So I also think of John because he was a friend of mine. I played golf with him a lot. He wrote that song. I also just think it's a reminder of how important that time frame was from, say, 1988 to whenever the internet sort of took over. Like that was the mating call for sports fans. Oh my God, something happened. I need to know about it. In this day and age, and I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I just got back from shooting some stuff in California with the Rams camp and the Cowboys camp and the Chargers. We also went down to Rancho Santo Margarita High School. Again, a tasty tequila beverage with a little tahini on the rim, if you've ever thought of one.
Right.
And
get us a
Carson Palmer.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Carson Palmer is the coach there now, and that's where he went to high school. And I was myself, former head coach Marvin Lewis, and former Cards GM Steve Keim. And he introduced all of us, and he introduced me by saying, back in the day before YouTube and for social media, the only way to really get your sports was watching SportsCenter and watching NFL Live and all that kind of stuff. And so it reminds me of what was and potentially what may be, but it's certainly, I think it has a lot of nostalgia for a lot of really big sports fans.
It absolutely does. And I, lament the, kind of current state of not just sports media, broadcast media at large. But I don't want to be, too much, to lean too hard toward the sky is falling, because I do think there are opportunities to do the kind of stuff that we're doing here now, which would have never been feasible, 10 or 20 years ago, I think, or at least not at this speed. It's weird. I think COVID really accelerated these kinds of opportunities where Zoom calls became so commonplace and acceptable to have a Zoom interview on TV where you don't think twice about whether or not someone's got a remote set up at home, and the fact that, the content matters, whether or not it was shot perfectly and all that kind of stuff. I mean, all that, some of those things are cool. And democratizing and all that. But the fact that you'd have so many people watching SportsCenter, and that was like this common language that we had as sports fans. And when big things happen in the world of sports, we all went one place. There was something pretty special about that, pretty magical.
It was,
Were you aware of that at the time? I mean, did you have a sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I had two goals when I got into this business. Mm-hmm. One, I wanted to be in a top 20 market before the age of 30. And for people that don't know, market size is based on, how many people are in the area. And New York is the number one market. LA's number two, et cetera, et cetera. I think DFW's got to be like
4 now.
8?
4 now.
4. Geez.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy how big things have expanded. So the idea is, wow, you get to a bigger station. There's more eyeballs. There's more money, all that kind of stuff. So that was one goal. The other goal was I wanted to work at ESPN. As I said, I grew up in Connecticut, and I remember coming home from college and turning on ESPN and watching, fast pitch softball and Australian rules football and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is crazy. This is ridiculous. And then, they got the rights to Major League Baseball, and they got the rights to the America's Cup, and they got the right to the NFL, which really knocked down the door. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it became a powerhouse, and guys like Boomer and Tom Jackson and so many of those early Bob Ley. Those guys were guys that I really admired and wanted to be like. So yeah, I knew it was a big deal. Like I knew it was a big deal. And when I first did my first shift there, I got calls and emails from people that I hadn't heard from in years. And they're like, wow, I just saw you on ESPN. So yeah, we all knew what it was. Yeah. We all knew how important that was. And, to this day, there are still some of those people that really translate and break through. It's just in the cluttered landscape that it is. There's a reason, unfortunately, every 6 months you see more layoffs coming at ESPN because to put it in perspective, just so people understand, and I'll say because I was there at the time, at our peak, I think we had about 110 million subscribers to ESPN. I think it's below 60 now.
Oof.
Or right around 60. So that's a significant drop off. And obviously a lot of people are doing things online, and they're pushing, ESPN Plus and ESPN Disney and ESPN packaged together, and that's offsetting some of that. But that's what we're talking about here. I mean, it was the place to go when you wanted to figure out what happened.
I think one of the difficult parts about, where it is now, and I don't watch as much as I used to for a number of reasons. One, you get older and you've got kids, and that kind of takes over. Two, the kind of appointment viewing is not there like it used to be. 3, we're kind of all getting our news and stuff here. So that certainly changes that. But 4, I think the conversation that happens there feels so different, where instead of it being the place where I'm going to go get, really trusted sports insight, and not to pick on these guys in particular, but Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee and the kind of the talking head, hot sports opinion vibe that may or may not even have to do with sports has absolutely taken over the airwaves. And bye, I'm done. It's not my cup of tea. So what are your thoughts on, that transition and that move and what it means for sports media overall?
I think it's not great, in my opinion. When we were really sort of in the battle to dominate, and I mean ESPN back in the late 90s and early 2000s, to dominate the sports landscape, we were competing with another network called CNNSI. Mm-hmm. And that was CNN and Sports Illustrated, one of the great bastions of sports journalism, the old Sports Illustrated magazine of all time, combined forces to try and give a rival to ESPN. And so when that happened, ESPN came out with a slogan that said, "We don't take ourselves seriously, but we take sports seriously." And I thought that was a really good message. Mm-hmm. I think it's the exact opposite now. I think at ESPN, we take ourselves very seriously. And if there's time, we'll talk about sports. And that is disappointing to me. I don't care what you think. I want to know what you know. Mm-hmm. I want you to tell me why something happened or what you think is going to happen based on information, statistical data, and relevance. Those are things that matter to me. Like when we start watching and showing people's outfits walking into the stadium, don't care. I don't care. I care about what happens when they put on their uniform.
Right.
That's what I tune into. And that's what we try to do. Here comes the shameless plug on the Wingo Network, available on all your audio podcasts or on YouTube, Trey Wingo Presents or Trey Wingo Golf, where we just launched a new show called Inside Football with a couple of Hall of Famers and that we just talked about. And it's also on YouTube, Inside FB Show. Mm-hmm. We're basically giving you the information and the analysis based on talking to the players, coaches, and general managers and relying on 18 years of head coaching experience, Hall of Fame careers from Chris Carter and Brian Urlacher, being inside a front office of a team for 30 plus years and eventually a general manager of that team. Those are the things that matter to me. Mm-hmm. I do not care what you think. I want you to tell me what you know based on statistical data and information. For example, there's all kinds of things that come up. 4th and 2, should you go for it or not? Well, that depends. You can't say 80% of the time it works. Well, yeah, but how many of those are in the first quarter of a regular season game as opposed to the fourth quarter of a regular season game on the road with the playoffs on the line? Those are very different scenarios. They're not the same thing. So you can't say, well, that 4th and 2 is the same as this 4th and 2, because if it's in the first quarter of a game in September and you don't get it, we move on. We got 3 quarters left to play. But if it's in November or December and you're on the road and this determines who or who doesn't win the division and maybe or maybe not get to the playoffs, emotions take over. And it's a different set of scenarios that you have to compute. So those are the things that matter to me. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that I'm interested in. I do not care about, well, I think this because of that. And the other part that bothers me is that I know from working with a lot of these people, they'll say something that they really don't believe or don't care, but they'll act like they will because they know it will come across as passionate or it will get a lot of clicks. I'm out. Yeah. Do not care about any of that. It's not what I want to do anymore, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. The whole point of the Straight Facts Homie, which is under the Trey Wingo Network, was our line was no bits, no bullshit, just ball. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to talk about. And the beauty of what I do and what you're doing now, no one tells me what to do. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about the things that I want to talk about. Much in the same way you have freedom now to say, this is important to me. This really isn't important to me. Like, this summer I got a lot of, where do you think LeBron's going? And I'm like, don't care. Mm-hmm. I've been through this 4 times with him already.
Let me know when he makes a decision.
Yeah. when he makes a decision, let me know and we'll see how it plays out. Like when he first left to go back to Cleveland, it was in a July somewhere, and I was supposed to do NFL Live with Herm Edwards that day, and he made the announcement, and then that took over everything, and they're like, we're canceling everything, we're doing full LeBron coverage. I'm like, cool, Herm and I are going to the golf course. Yeah, see you later. I had no problems not doing a show that day, So that's the freedom of what I do now. But I do miss the idea of, and there are some people that really do a really good job. I want to be clear about it. I think Dan Orlovsky does a real good job breaking down tape. Tim Hasselbeck is there. Jeff Saturday still does it. Damian Woody has been really, really good at it for me, from my perspective. But so much of it is blah, 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 blah. Let me talk so I can just say words and let me speak. I'm not into that.
The tricky part is, I think, you guys, when SportsCenter was really humming along, part of what made it so good, you say no bits, but you had the commercials, the epic SportsCenter commercials. Oh, yeah. This is SportsCenter, so many great ones. You guys were wordsmiths when you would set up pieces. You weren't afraid to have fun. You weren't afraid to kind of wink and nudge the audience. The hard part is that requires nuance, and nuance isn't easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And correct. You and I spent a lot of time yesterday talking about Dale Hansen here, legend in Dallas-Fort Worth. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with, Dale's work, it's worth looking him up on YouTube. But I had interned under him. You'd seen him work. And what I admired about Dale so much was he was not a highlights guy. He was a story guy. What's the story?
Storyteller.
Yes. Yeah. And interning under him, watching him write and spend time revising what he wrote and reading it back to himself and doing it again. That just, most sportscasters, and I was one once, you don't spend that much time on it. I like to think I did a little bit more so because I watched Dale, and that really kind of set an example for me. But I think you guys set a standard, and you look like you were having so much fun doing it that you inspired a generation of sportscasters that wanted to say "boom goes the dynamite" and come up with catchphrases. Nothing wrong with that, but it's you got to learn to walk before you can run. And I think you guys did that so deftly, and there were so many of you that could do it so well. You brought your personality to it. You brought cultural references to it. I mean, I don't know how you measure that impact.
Yeah, it's true, and I appreciate that, and that was something we all tried to do. And there's a couple things in there I wanted to sort of make sure I get to each topic.
Yeah,
look, we did have fun. If you can't have fun doing this job, then there's something wrong
sports.
With you. It's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be life and death. Yeah. It's not supposed to be the most important thing in your life. It shouldn't take place over other things that really are more significant when it comes to, living and rolling out this mortal coil on the planet. So let's have fun with it. Mm-hmm. You can have fun with it and still dispense information. Like that's the thing that's important to me. Like we did a bit on NFL Live that we created. Eric Mangini, the former Jets head coach, and was with Bill Belichick of the Patriots, also with the Cleveland Browns. He would come in after Sunday's game saying, "You guys overreact to everything all the time." So we came up with a segment called Overreaction Monday, which is basically saying, somebody played great in the first game. They're going to throw for 5,000 yards. No, it's one game. So the whole point of it was like, let's not get crazy about what we saw until it plays out a little longer. I tried to take the Zen philosophy approach. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. So we did that. It was a bit, but it was a bit derived out of the information that was, or context that was not being presented. One of my favorite things I ever did on NFL Live, there was a Monday night game between the Chiefs and the Patriots. And I mean to tell you, the Chiefs throttled New England. I think they won 38-14. It was in early October.
I feel like Patriots is this like 2015 maybe? Like
no, not 2015. It might have been. Well, it might have been 2014.
Well, because I feel like I remember a game and we thought New England's dead.
Yeah, and everyone was saying that, right? Yeah. Everyone on ESPN was saying that. They were like, I had friends of mine that I trusted said Tom Brady is washed. He looks like Joe Namath with the Rams, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. So we made sure after that Monday night game on NFL Live, we said, hey, everybody, let's pump the brakes here, okay? You don't bury a team in October. You don't know what they are in October. You see what they are in November and December. And oh, by the way, the Patriots went on to win the Super Bowl that year. Like that's the thing, or those kind of things I was really proud of how we handled our business on NFL Live. When everyone else just wanted to put the biggest opinion, I think this and this, context matters. Historical things matter. Time matters. And the Patriots, sure enough, I think they fell to 2-2. I think it was something like that. And they looked terrible. And then they went on to win the Super Bowl that year. And I felt pretty damn good about NFL Live and our guys being the only ones that were saying, guys, it's September or early October. They'll figure this out. He's the greatest coach and he's the greatest quarterback. I don't think you can bury them just yet.
But part of that, too, is working alongside guys who've been in the trenches. And you talked about not wanting to hear what people think. You want to hear what they know. They know what they're looking at when they watch a game like that. And if I remember correctly, that year, Belichick almost treated those first games as an extended training camp. Like I felt
we're on to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
We're on to Cincinnati was the line.
And that's where his genius, I think, lies is I think football is a game that so often you're just trying to get better and be betterer. And if you, to go back to, high school algebra, if you think about an asymptote, it's that line you get closer and closer and closer to, you never get there. If that's what you're focused on in football, the margins are smaller and smaller for you to be better than your opponent. But I think he was a master of being different. If they needed to go in and play the Colts and run the ball 45 times, he would do that and throw a curveball.
There's a great example. There's a great example of that. Okay, in the year that Brady got suspended for Spygate, and we can have the debate of whether or not he should have been or whatever. I mean, that's a whole different dynamic. Yeah. The bottom line was the NFLPA surrendered the right for Roger Goodell to impose those suspensions, and that's what was held up in court. But Jimmy Garoppolo was the starter. And then week 1 or week 2, he got hurt. And the Patriots then had a Thursday night game against the Texans and J.J. Watt, when J.J. Watt was the dude. He was the number one badass defensive player in the NFL. Well, Jacoby Brissett became the starter. And in that game, on a Thursday night, which was a short week after the Sunday game in which he was injured, I think against the Dolphins, where Garoppolo was hurt, they called more designed quarterback runs in that game than they called in Tom Brady's entire career up to that point. I mean, that's how flexible Bill Belichick was. His big line, and Teddy Bruschi used to say this all the time, he said, fellas, when we can beat a team in a bunch of different ways, that's when we know we're really good. And that's what he was best at, figuring out ways. Like, there's a reason guys like a couple of running backs were cut, or wide receivers were cut by the Cleveland Browns and went on to have really good careers as role players with the New England Patriots. Bill was never great at, and he would even say this, never great at drafting. That was not his best forte. He could, apples to oranges was not his forte. But when you got into the NFL and he saw what you could do, he was the best at choosing apples to apples. Like, this guy doesn't fit here. He will fit in here really well in what we want him to do.
I think the words of one of my colleagues at NFL Network, Bucky Brooks, always come to mind, because he would say this about Bill Belichick, that his game plans were always snowflakes. They were never the same, that everyone was different. And that was fun watching. But I feel like I think of life lessons when I look at Belichick's approach and so many other athletes and coaches, their approaches to the game of football. And we kind of talked about this yesterday, getting to work alongside some of those analysts, some of those coaches and former players was like going to football university. And the way you watch the game, the things you learn, when to pump the brakes, when to really lean in, what to watch on the football field, it makes watching games with other people sometimes hard. Sometimes difficult.
And by the way, real quickly, because you mentioned his name, and I want to make sure I give him the respect he deserves. You mentioned Dale Hansen. When I went to Baylor, every Sunday night we would sit around and watch Dale Hansen Sports Spectacular, whatever it was called, Sports Special. I can't remember what it was on Sunday nights. Dale was a master at being informative as well as creative. Michael Jordan's rookie year, when Michael took over the NBA, every night at the end of his sportscast, he would say, "Oh, Michael Jordan comes to Dallas in 73 days. Oh, Michael Jordan comes to Dallas in 63 days." The one time of the year that the Bulls would travel to Dallas to play the Mavs. You know what I mean? He would do that every single night. And he broke stories. He brought down SMU. He twice took down the Baylor men's basketball program for good reasons. But so that's when I talk about what we tried to be and what I tried to do. Dale did that. He inspired me to be like him because he was funny. He was a little acerbic, but he was also a really, really good reporter. A really, really good way of getting to a story and taking it to its conclusion by digging. So there was a sort of combination there, and I just wanted to make sure I gave Dale his props because he was one of the reasons I really wanted to do this.
Well, I think another thing that Dale did so well, I talked about him being a storyteller. He was, the highlights served the story. Are the Rangers trending in the right direction? What do these highlights tell us about where they're going? Did this pitcher have a good outing? Because that means, that serves the bigger picture. I remember a line from the Howard Stern movie, Private Parts, from way back when. Great line about, I'm going to totally butcher it, but people tuning in. Fans of Howard Stern would listen for like 2 hours. People who hated Howard Stern would listen for 3. And they both said they listened for the same reason, and that was because
they want to see what he says next.
They want to see what he's going to say.
It's a great line.
And that applied to Dale, that
I
you
agree.
wanted to see what he's going to say. And the number of people I've encountered that have said, I can't stand Dale Hansen, but I respect him, and I want to see what he's going to say. It's a long list, and I think Dale would be happy. He'd be fine with that, I think. So
I think he would be completely comfortable with that description.
The time you spent at ESPN, we talked about, the kind of creativity and the personality that you guys brought to highlights. And I'm curious, when you're out and about, when you get away from Bristol and you're in public, over the years, no doubt you've had encounters with fans that have come up to you. What's been the most bizarre fan encounter that you've ever had?
Oh, for the most part, they're really great, right? They really are. Patriots fans, during the whole Spygate thing, I would say there's a reason the term masshole exists. So that might be a little more abrasive. But for the most part, it's been, the funny thing is like who you get mistaken for, right? Like, for example, this happened at DFW 10 years ago. I was flying through somewhere and somebody looked at me and goes, "Hey, Mike Tirico." And I'm like, not even remotely. Not even close. The only thing I could think of is that Wingo, Tirico both end in O, but Mike is a beautiful, bald black man. I am a silver-haired white man. Don't quite understand how that one happened.
If they'd said Kenny John Slattery from Mad Men, that would have worked.
I get that one a lot. Roger Sterling. Yeah. I do get that one a lot. But Kenny Mayne and I used to get confused all the time. I think it's because we were the only two white guys with gray hair. I think that was a part of it. And I told this story in the Lost episode, which is in the ether yesterday, so I want to tell it again. I was Super Bowl 40 in Detroit, and the late, great John Clayton, who, by the way, I have this shirt, John Clayton, the great insider.
That's so good. That's another deep cut.
Yeah, he's
for people who are listening to this. It's it's from this is SportsCenter, right?
Yeah, Mom, I'm done with my segment. Yeah. That's the T-shirt. So anyway, his wife came up to me at our offices in Detroit and said, "I just think you are so brave," and I'm like, okay. I mean, sure. Like being called brave. No idea what you're talking about. She goes, "John has not danced since our wedding. And for you to go on Dancing with the Stars and put yourself out there." And I see John behind her just like holding his head like this down. And what are you going to say? It wasn't me. It was Kenny that was on Dancing with the Stars. So I just went, "Oh, thank you very much."
Yeah.
What am I supposed to say? "You're wrong, lady. That was the other guy." I was like,
I'm so insulted.
Yeah. Exactly. So I just rolled with it. But yeah, most counters have been great. They've been super nice. It's been fun.
When you look back at the career that you've had and are still having, because I think it sounds like this what act we ever want to call this for you has been really fulfilling on a bunch of levels. You're getting to do some different stuff. But has there been a especially big pinch me moment? Getting to go to Super Bowls and getting paid to do that. That's not a terrible deal. But I'm sure the athletes, Hall of Famers, All Stars that you've encountered, a kid like me collecting baseball cards in his bedroom would have gone bonkers over.
Yeah, people always ask what were your favorite moments at ESPN, all the things you were able to do, and I give them two answers. One, honestly, one of my favorite things ever to do. For 7 years, I did the U.S. Open golf and Open Championship golf, or we call it here the British Open. And just to be there for those were really fun, amazing times. And there's nothing like being at a live event and being a part of calling a live event. It's very different than being in a studio show. But I think three things come to mind when I think of my career at ESPN. Number one was we started NFL Live. Okay, NFL Live was a throwaway half-hour show on ESPN2 from Tuesday through Saturday, otherwise known as the only 5 days of the week at that time where there was no football. And there was no set time for it. It would just appear. Sometimes it was 3:30 in the afternoon on ESPN2. Other times it was 6:30.
Did you guys? Were you live?
Yeah, we taped it. We did it one time every day, and then it ran.
Would re-air, right? Okay.
Yeah, but you never knew. There was no set schedule. Oh, we'll throw it in here. We'll throw it in here. Well, over the course of 2 or 3 years, 2 years really, we turned that into a throwaway show on ESPN2 for half an hour into an hour-long show on ESPN 4 to 5. We made it appointment viewing. Really super proud of that. The other one, which we sort of alluded to with how we do this now, was the 2020 COVID draft. 87 days before we were supposed to do the draft in 2020 in Las Vegas, everything shut down. And the NFL Network completely shut down based on California's stringent COVID rules at the time. And we're not having a debate about what should have been or shouldn't have been. I'm just explaining what happened. So they came to me and said, "Just so you know, you're the only one that's going to do this draft. And you're going to do it in the studio by yourself. And everyone else will be set up on Zooms like this.
Okay.
So I was in the studio for 3 days. It was just me, a 2-camera operator. No, we had 1 jib operator and everyone else was robotic cameras and a floor manager. And we had this, our analysts were Mel Kiper Jr., Louis Riddick, Michael Irvin, Kurt Warner, and Daniel Jeremiah. They were all in these box screens in the studio. And I had to be very specific about saying, because normally you're on the set, you say, oh, guys, what do you think of this pick? And someone jumps in. Well, in that situation, you have to say, Mel, what do you think? Louis, why do you like this? And there was one time where I threw it out and they all started talking at once. I was like, damn it. Like, that's on me. I need to, whatever. But, we did that. And that's still the highest rated draft of all time. And no one's ever going to touch it.
No.
So I was very...
we're not going back to where you're going to have a captive audience like that and everybody.
Correct. So nobody... that was the way it went and how flawlessly it came off. None of us knew whether it was going to work or not. And it just did. 3 years, if that happened 3 years earlier, we might not have had a draft because we didn't have the technology available to us. So that was the other thing. And the third one, and I need to preface this the right way because when I say this, sometimes people might hear me wrong. I was really proud of Bob Ley and I hosting SportsCenter for a week after 9/11. We went on the air that day, and I remember driving into work.
Yep.
And hearing everything that was going on, I'm like, why am I going to talk about sports today? This is the dumbest idea in the world. No one cares. Like, there are way more important things. And we got to the office, and there was a debate whether or not we would go on the air that day. And Bob Ley, to his undying credit, and actually we still text every year on that day and just catch up with each other. He said, look, obviously there are things that are way more important, but our job, as you said, sort of the paper of record, that's who we were. SportsCenter is the show of record on what happened in sports today. And we need to go on the air and describe how these events have impacted our world of sports. And, I was adamant against not doing it. He was adamant that we should. And as it turns out, he was 100% right. And I was 100% wrong. We were supposed to go on for just an hour. And the executive said, hey, this is going really well. Would you mind doing a little longer? We're like, sure. I think we were on the air for 3 hours. And then we came back Tuesday and did another 3 hours. And then Wednesday, we did another 2.5 hours. I think for 4 straight days, Bob and I were the only people on SportsCenter, anchoring SportsCenter that week. And again, I wish it had never happened. I'm not, if I could go back and have it not happen, that would be much better, but it did happen. And I felt very honored to be a part of that. And they still play at the 9/11 Museum in downtown New York. They still play Bob and mine's video of how we introduced SportsCenter that day on 9/11. So those were the three, I think, the sort of pillar moments.
To have that, though, that last aspect, I mean, that's got to be a kind of a gut punch in a way to look back at this thing that you did, and it's got this place of importance. I remember that day too, and I remember driving into work, and I was also in sports, and I remember going to give blood, and the line was out the door. And this is the morning it happened. I mean, I can remember it so clearly. And I also remember thinking, look, the heroic firemen and police officers that ran toward those buildings, we had a new definition, I think, of heroism that came out of September 11th. I remember thinking, okay, I'm not a fireman, I'm not a policeman, but our version of running toward the building is doing the story. Yeah. And that felt important. And like, I don't know what else I can do. The line to give blood's around the corner. I'm going to do this. So I think I can see, in that day, how you felt like, oh, is this the right thing? And then in hindsight, you realize like, wow, we did something special.
Yeah. I mean, it was, again, I wish it had never happened, but I was honored that they chose us to do it. And I think we did it to the best of our ability in the most respectful way possible.
Moving forward to what you've been working on lately, you talked a little bit about it, some of the different shows and different programming. Was it 2020 when you left? What year was it?
2020.
So 2020.
August of 2020. Yeah.
You move forward into this kind of new the Wild West of creation opportunities, content creation, and are doing some of the same kind of stuff that you used to do, but in so many different ways. Man, are you having the best time, man? Because it certainly seems like you are loving what you're working on.
Yeah, I am. It was certainly an unsettling time when I first left. I wasn't sure what was going to work and what I was going to do. And I just knew that I couldn't do that anymore. I didn't have, I'll give Stephen A. credit for one thing. He has found a way to care or act like he cares about everything. I've said this before, and I've said it to him. I will try my life to care about one thing the way you try and care about everything. I don't have that. It's like you said, you get older, things change. I used to watch everything. Oh, NBA All-Star Game, got to watch it. NHL All-Star Game, got to watch it. I'm not watching all that stuff anymore. I'm going to watch the stuff I want to watch. And that's the sort of freedom. Well, those weren't words. That's the sort of freedom that comes with what we're doing now. I love golf. I'm very passionate about it. I'm not good at it, but I'm very passionate about it. I love covering the NFL. I love the chess game that goes in it. Teddy Bruschi said something great to me once. He said, if you just stop watching the football, you'll really learn something about football and watch everything else that goes on. I enjoy those kind of discussions and the freedom to do those kind of things on my schedule and the things that I want to talk about, I think is the most freeing aspect of it all. So yeah, it's been a blast. It's been a blast, and the response has been great. I do a weekly golf show called Golf Live with my friend Justin Ray, who is a rising star, and he's also going to be part of the Ryder Cup team and helping their analytics in 2027 at Adair Manor. We do it every Tuesday, and we break down everything that happened in the week of golf. I'm taping an episode of Inside Football later on today after we're done, and that's Inside FB Show on YouTube. And then all the other interviews, I've got another couple of interviews lined up. That's on Trey Wingo Presents and Trey Wingo Golf on YouTube. You can find those there, or the Trey Wingo Network, or the Wingo Network rather, on all the audio podcasts. I didn't name it. My producer came up with the idea, and my agent said it was a good idea. Whatever.
There you go.
It's fun. It's fun. It's super fun.
Well, I'm curious about the chronology, because I know I'd seen you pop up with, some various kind of other sports network kind of affiliated opportunities.
Yeah.
This is stuff that's under your umbrella. Is it where you think, okay, I've got an online following, I'm going to go create content for them? Is it finding an investor? Is it finding advertisers? I mean, did you have to develop some new skills to make this viable?
Yeah. I mean, it's, look, I was very fortunate that I had a built-in audience on X or Twitter. I'm sorry, it'll never be X.
It's always Twitter.
It's Twitter. It's always Twitter. So that was sort of a platform. And my business partner in this venture, who used to work with me at ESPN, told me years ago, cable is dead. You got to get on YouTube. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, turns out she was absolutely right. And she knows exactly what she's doing. So we partnered up with this venture starting really last year. And, our YouTube page has grown from, 15,000 to almost over 60,000.
Yeah.
And that's been super fun. And the advertisers have come in, which is great. And that's been very helpful. My agency has been really good at providing sponsors and guests. And we have another company that sells a lot of our stuff, and that's gone really well. The thing is, we just want to be authentic, one of the things we started, the whole premise, the original show was going to be called the Straight Facts Homie Podcast. And now that's an umbrella under the Wingo Network. But the whole point is, look, here's the real deal. This is what's happening. For example, for the football season last year, let's see if I can find this for you real quick. Everyone was talking about how good Saquon Barkley was going to be. And I was like, I don't think he's going to be really good this year. So I went and looked at every single 2,000-yard rusher in NFL history, what they did the year after, starting with O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson went from averaging 6 yards a carry his 2,000-yard season to 4.2. Eric Dickerson went from 5.6 to 4.2. Barry Sanders went from 6.1 to 4.3. Terrell Davis went from 5.1 to 3.1. Jamal Lewis went 5.3 to 4.3. Chris Johnson, 5.6 to 4.3. Adrian Peterson, 6 yards per carry to 4.5. Derrick Henry, 5 yards to 4.1, and then Saquon cratered. The point is, the statistics will tell you that when you run that much, the next year is where it catches up with you. And, Saquon was the first 2,000-yard rusher to go to the Super Bowl and win it, so he played 3 extra games. So that wore down his body. So the whole premise, one of the things we said is, if you're drafting Saquon Barkley, you're probably making a mistake. You can go look at his numbers last year. They were not good in any way, shape, or form. They could be better this year, but that's something statistically in context that people needed to understand. So that's the whole premise of how this started. And it just sort of morphed into, interviews and all this other stuff. Like I had a great one with Justin Thomas and Kevin Kisner and, a bunch of guys in the NFL. And that's sort of where things progress under the umbrella of the Wingo Network.
We've also, we talked about the rise of the kind of talking head, the Pat McAfee and the Stephen A. Smith. Another thing that is fueling, I think, some of the interest in this content that's away from traditional outlets is the rise in sports betting, online gambling being so much more accessible. How much has that growth and the legalization of that affected the kind of work that you get to do?
It affects everything. First of all, I want to be clear about something. Pat McAfee, Stephen A. Smith, if it works for you, God bless you. Couldn't do it to save my life. If it works for you and you enjoy it, do it. No shame. Just not part of what I want to do. Sports betting has changed the landscape forever. Like the first major thing that happened to me after leaving ESPN was Caesars hired me, and we were trying to come up with a title. It was Sports Ambassador and something. I don't know. But it was ridiculous. And
did they make you wear a toga?
Everywhere. No, but they made me want to afford to wear whatever I wanted. Is the best way to describe it. So, that was it's changed, and it's continuing to change and continuing to evolve. And I don't understand why every state doesn't do this. I mean, it's free money. You talk about well, we want to increase our revenues in the state. I have an idea. Legalize sports gambling because everyone's going to do it. And people,
they're doing it anyway.
Like, it's right. They're doing it anyway. But they've done it for years. By the way, just so you know, the reason the injury report comes out in the NFL is because of gamblers. And and I want to be clear about this. It was because the NFL didn't want gamblers to have the inside information. Because if you had a couple of guys that knew somebody on a team, this guy, his hammy didn't look good this week.
I know
that's
a guy.
Inside information. Yeah. So the whole point of the injury report. So when I hear longtime executives in the NFL like Tony Dungy come out and say, well, I don't like this. Dude, your whole life has been shaped by this. You just didn't know it. Okay. And reason you put out the injury reports is so everybody has the information. That's the entire point. That's the whole reason. That's why it exists. It doesn't exist just to exist. That's why they wanted to make sure there was nothing nefarious going on. And even before the NFL was officially in with sports betting, I mean, come on. There's been a partnership there I'm not saying anything illegal. I'm just saying they've been connected for a long, long time. Let's just be real about it.
And kind of to your point, like, okay, great. Maybe you don't want anything to do with this. But by the way, a substantial portion of your paycheck relies on the attention that those gamblers are paying to your product.
Correct. I mean, like outside of a few weeks in March around the NCAA tournament, the majority of sports betting is on the NFL by a massive amount.
Yep.
Massive amount. It's not even close. Not even close.
I will say one of the things I've enjoyed about the transition, and I don't know that I paid as much attention to what your online presence looked like beforehand, but you have been increasingly willing to tackle, not like you're tackling social issues, but you're not afraid to weigh in here and there. And it feels like that's a side of you that you have. Maybe are you more free to do that? You think being on your own?
Yeah, no one is looking over my shoulder saying, "Don't say that." I'm like, if I feel it, I'm going to say it. And if I want to be clear about something. I hate politics. I can't stand politics. But I don't like people lying.
Mm.
And I don't like people saying, oh, well, this is this. And when it's clearly not.
If you
Just
like
be
lying,
honest.
politics is for you. I mean, they go hand in hand.
Yeah,
So if you don't like it, that's part and parcel.
Yeah, we watched the Hunt for Red October the other night, and the one scene, this guy says, I'm a politician, which means I'm a liar and a cheat, but it also means I keep my options open, So I can't stand politics. Just don't try and. I had a buddy of mine at ESPN for many years. He used to say, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my philosophy. Don't sit there and say something that I know is not true, and you're just trying to convince people it's true for your benefit. And this goes to both sides or all sides of the equation. Just be real. All I ask you to do is be real.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's how democracy works or doesn't when that doesn't happen.
Correct. So. Democracy dies in silence. It dies in darkness.
Well, Trey, man, listen, we're coming up on time. I really appreciate you doubling up and giving me just some of your insight and perspective and yet another hour to redo this episode. Just like I said, big fan of your work and just so glad we got a chance to connect today. So thank you.
Marc, it was awesome. And again, somebody somewhere someday will find that lost episode and it will be glorious.
You know what? When I find it, I'm going to post it on Tanglewood Moms.
There you go. Facebook page. That's the only place for it. It gets spicy in there.
Again, a huge thanks to Trey Wingo for joining me for the inaugural episode of the revamped More with Marc Istook podcast, Take 2. And a special thanks to you for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe. Please leave a 5-star rating, write a review. That kind of stuff really helps me out. And of course, you can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can watch full episodes on YouTube. Have a great day. And don't forget, there is always more to the story.